Hello everyone, welcome to 21 Gems of Chess presented to you by Chess Gyaan Academy and FollowChess app. I'm Grandmaster Priyadharshan Kannappan and we are now on week 2 of our series. This is the day 9 on our 21-day series, and every day we have been looking at a legendary chess player, one of his best or brilliant game, and we have been talking about the players who were very like who came very close to becoming a world champion but maybe fell short. So in that list, the player whose game we are going to view today is Mikhail Chigorin. So I did not mention Grandmaster because the title and that concept really didn't exist back then. But Mikhail Chigorin played two World Championship matches against William Steinitz. So he was kind of the first person or player to play in the World Championship match. And Mikhail Chigorin was a Russian master, in the USSR or the Russian Empire. And Chigorin's style was pretty tactical, aggressive, and imaginative. And we have quite a few openings and variations named after Chigorin that are still actively played till today. And an interesting information when I was researching for the topic was that Chigorin did not know how to play chess till the age of 16. I mean, how time changes. Now we have grandmasters at the age of 12 and 13, and here you have a player who went on to challenge for the world championship match, but he actually did not learn chess till the age of 16. So that's the key information about our player whom we are going to be discussing today. So let's get into the game that we are going to be discussing. So this is a game that was played between Isidor Gunsberg, another well-reputed player in the timeline as Mikhail Chigorin, and Gunsberg has the white pieces and Mikhail Chigorin has the black pieces. So this was played in a match setting where Chigorin and Gunsberg played against each other in Havana, Cuba in 1890. So this is the second game of that match, and Chigorin has the black pieces. So white starts out with e4 and black goes e5. So if you are a player who plays the Rilopus, I'm pretty sure you would have known there is a variation called Chigorin variation in Rilopus. So e4, e5 is not a big surprise. So knight f3, knight c6, and we have the Rilopus on the board. And here Gunsberg went bishop b5. But Gunsberg also, for an equal amount of games, went bishop c4. So he kind of played both bishop c4 and bishop b5. He did not really have a favorite to say. In this game, he chooses bishop b5, and black goes a6, Rilopus, bishop a4, knight f6, d3, and black goes d6. So this is an example of how Chigorin wants to keep the centered, defended and solid. And back in those days, the kind of the understanding about center was that it is good to even have a defensive center if you're black, and holding on to the center is a very critical approach. And Chigorin was actually an advocate of the sound defensive center. So we can see d6 being a reflection of that approach. In modern days, you may see more games being played these days with b5 followed by bishop c5 and then going d6, so that the bishop is outside the pawn chain. But in the game, black decided to go d6 directly. So white goes c3, and black responds with g6, which in my opinion is a good move. The reason why I feel this is a good move is because white is kind of playing the position slow. As you can see, white played d3 and white didn't go for d4 kind of positions, and then white is going c3. So as white is handling the position slow, black has the kind of advantage to also make moves which are not immediately developing, but he directly to put his pieces on better squares, because a normal idea would be to go something like bishop e7, short castle, rook e8, and then pull the bishop back to f8, and then maybe g6, bishop g7. But that idea would be best if white, let's say, was immediately putting some pressure on the center and so on. But as you can see, white is also handling the position in a slow manner. So black goes g6 directly, so he can save that few tempos that he would have to do if he goes rook e8, then bishop f8 if he goes bishop e7 in this position. So for g6, white went knight b d2, we have bishop g7, knight f1, and short castle. So this knight b d2 followed by knight f1 is a clever way of saving a tempo, because in case, let's say, if white short castle and black went bishop g7, knight b d2 short castle, white has to first play rook e1, then only he can go knight f1, knight g3 or knight e3. But if you do go knight b d2 before short castling, then you save that critical tempo, because you can go knight f1 short castle and you can place your knight as you wish on g3 or e3. But that's what Gunsberg didn't do. He went all the way up to knight f1, and here he played a move which is start of a faulty plan, I would say, and that is he went h3. So the more logical variation obviously would be knight g3, and then prepare for short castling, and if black goes b5, white goes bishop c2, bishop b7, and we have a very complex position in hand with a lot of strong games being played in this position. So this is one option, a good option for white. On the ninth move, another good option for white would be to go bishop g5. This is a good option because you have a game between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana from the YCAN-Z in 2010 with bishop g5, and Caruana responded with d5, a very energetic move. Queen e2, queen d6, bishop takes f6, bishop f6, knight e3, knight e7, bishop b3, c6, h4, and black drew this game, and I think black didn't face much of an issue from the opening phase. So this is ninth move, bishop g5. But in the game, white decided to go h3, which, as I mentioned, is fault of a dubious plan. And again, h3 is a very slow move in the opening, and Chigorin realizes that white is falling behind in development. As you can see, only really these two pieces are the ones that are developed or have kind of outside. Even the knight on f1 is actually blocking the path. Even though it has moved from its initial square on b1, it's not really in a developed state on f1. But if in comparison, if you look at black's pieces, look at this knight on c6, f6, bishop g7, short and the king and the rook. So black has a lead in development. So black immediately strikes in the center with the strong d5. It's not a waste in tempo as d6, d5, but black is exploiting the lack of complete development by white. So here white has bunch of options. I would say, let's say if knight g3, then black can go b5, bishop c2, then capture de4, de4, queen d1, bishop d1, rook d8, and black has nothing to worry. Black has a great position. Maybe black can even not take de4 but keep the pressure with bishop e6 or bishop b7 followed by rook e8 and continue to play. That's one option. If white decides to play bishop takes c6, b takes c6, and let's say knight e5, if he's greedy and wants to capture the pawn, then black will just simply capture de4, and if d4 goes c5, and black has a big advantage because the center is kind of fluid and the double bishops is going to favor black. So none of this was played in the game though, and the Gunsberg decided to choose 10 queen e2. So he's defending the e4 pawn. Also at the same time he's removing the queen away from the d1 so that the queens can't get exchanged. So here black has an interesting option, which is to go knight h5, and this move is primarily aimed at stopping white from going knight e3 or knight g3. So if knight e3, then yeah, we have knight f4 and the queen is under big pressure, and then possibly some sort of even takes and knight d3 check kind of ideas exist. And if knight g3, black will still go knight f4, and if bishop f4, e4, the knight again has to make a decision and it has to go back to f1. So it's principally aimed against knight e3 or knight g3, and if that doesn't happen, then white also cannot short castle. So knight h5 is a very, very interesting move, and if white wants to do short castling, then white has to go knight 1 h2 and then bishop e6, short castle b5, and an unclear position. But I like black's chances here more than white. So this is if 10th move knight h5, but instead of this, Chigorin decided to go b5 and white went bishop c2. So here is, in my opinion, a critical decision making moment, and you may see similar position to like this also arise from Guccio piano or the Italian pawn structures also. And here black needs to make a decision on how he wants to proceed forward. For example, one idea for black would be to maybe play d takes e4 and try to play on the d file, or maybe go d4 and try to do some other ideas, or just keep the pawn as it is on d5. So black has complete control on how he wants to shape the game from here on. And in the game, Chigorin went d4, and this is a very interesting decision. And but I feel like maybe black could have delayed the decision a move, one or two moves more. He could have played some sort of preparatory move like 8-6, and then if knight g3, go bishop e6. The critical point being, if white short castles here, white runs into some issues after de4, because de4 is not possible due to bishop c4, and white loses an exchange. So black, if white captures something like knight e4, then white can if white captures knight e4, black can still capture back knight e4, and white would be forced to capture with queen. But this allows bishop d5 kind of ideas with f5 and a very strong center, and a lot of space for black. So this is a problem for white. So he cannot do short castle, but maybe white can try some move like 13th move queen d1, or if bishop e3, then rook e8, and white is certainly still struggling to get equality. So h6 would have been an interesting option on move 11 for black. In the game, as I earlier mentioned, the black decided to go d4, which changes the nature of the position completely, as now the center is kind of more semi-closed. There's no pressure on e4 pawn anymore, and white continues his faulty plan, which is associated with h3. He goes g4, and a very premature attack in my opinion, because white first has to take care of his king before he can go after the black's king. So for this, black goes queen d6, a very logical move in my opinion. He's kind of strengthening on the e5 pawn, also possibly going to put some pressure with the rook d8 and put some pressure on the d3 pawn, and also some ideas include dc3, bc3, and maybe queen c5, and put pressure on the c3 pawn. So this it's a multi-purpose move going queen d6, and here white logically should have played knight g3. That's why you went knight f1, right? Knight d2, knight f1. So you should put your knight on g3. And here black has this idea to go knight d7, and if short castle, then play d takes c3, b takes c3, knight c5, with the idea of knight e6 followed by knight f4, and exploit this big weakness on the f4 square. And black certainly has an equals plus position. But white had a change in mind, I would say, and he went knight 1 d2, which is a very surprising move, because why did you go knight f1 and then come back to d2? So here the best option for black would have been to just capture dc3, b takes c3, and go h5. So the point of this is, even though black's king is slightly weaker compared to when the pawn is on h7, if the pawn is on h5, the point being that white cannot really exploit it in any way, and actually white's king is far more in danger than the black king on g8. So for h5, let's say if white goes something like bishop b2, black can happily capture hg4, hg4, bishop g4, because this square is well protected, h8, h7, h6. White can't really do anything, and white cannot really castle long or so and create some attack, because even after castle long, then black can actively start considering moves like b4 to kind of weaken the d4 square, or black can just simply go a5, a4 ideas also. So this would have been the best approach for black, to capture d takes c3, b takes c3, and then go h5. But instead of this, black went bishop e6, which allowed white to play cd4. Because after cd4, the center is again kind of semi-closed. White has no pressure, white's e4 pawn has no pressure, white's d3 pawn is not going to have any pressure, because d3 is well protected and e4 is protected by the d3 pawn. So no immediate pressure that can be applied on white's central pawns. So here, there is two captures. One is knight takes d4, other is ed4. Some of you may be thinking ed4 should be an outright piece blunder, because if e takes d4, there is e5. Technically, it is black losing a piece, but black actually gets some compensation for sacrificing the piece. So let's see what happens after e5. Knight takes e5, and if white captures with the knight, it's just a mistake, because knight d5, knight f3, and knight f4, and black has more than enough compensation, in my opinion, for the sacrificed piece, because black can consider moves like bishop d5 or rook e8 or queen c6, all these moves, and go after the white king, and black should generate a lot of initiative and attack. But the best move, I think, for white would be to capture on e5 with the queen, and if queen c6, attacking the c2 bishop, white has bishop d1, and then if bishop takes g4, threatening rook fe8 and winning the queen, white can coolly short castle, bishop takes h3, rook e1, rook a e8. White has three pawns for the piece. Black has three pawns for the piece and some initiative or attack going. But still, I feel like it's not worse or anything for white as of now, because white can still, soundly find defensive resources. So this is just an equality, unclear kind of position that we have on the board right now. But certainly ed4 is not needed. I mean, I just wanted to show ed4 just to show that it's not a piece blunder if e5 is played, but it has some interesting ideas. But it does certainly give away whatever advantage or edge that black had after cd4 by white, which if black goes knight d4 as played in the game, black certainly has a slightly better position. So knight d4, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, knight f3. And here, to the viewers, I would suggest you to pause the video and maybe make a decision if you want to go queen d6 or go queen b4 first. So once you make the decision, calculate few variations to justify your decision, and then you can proceed further with this video. So for knight f3 in the game, Chigorin decided to go queen b4. But I feel queen d6 would be better, because the reason is after queen b4 anyway, we will go king f1 and go king g2 and manually do a castling. So why not just go queen d6? Because here, if short castling, let's say if white short castles, then you can play c5. And actually the rook on f1 is worse in my opinion than being on h1, because at least in h1 it can defend this h3 pawn and kind of be more supportive for the king side. But on f1 it's worse. So queen d6 allowing white to short castle could have been a better decision, because after queen d6 short castle c5, if bishop e3, rook a c8, in long term prospects are all in favor of black. Black always has these two big weaknesses that he can try to exploit in the future. But instead in the game, black decided to go queen b4 check, and black provokes the white king to move. White went king f1, black goes queen d6 now, and here white should have just simply played king g2, and if h5, then go knight g5 and bishop d7. An unclear position according to the engines, but practically I feel black has more proactive ideas and weaknesses that he can exploit in white's position. So I would certainly choose black in this position. So here on 18th move, white made, in my opinion, the biggest mistake of this game, and that is b3. The problem with this move I have is that this kind of traps your own bishop on c2. The bishop really has no future on c2. It's like equivalent to a pawn, and you will see this even in the remainder of the game. The bishop would have no active role to play. And for b3, if you want, you can calculate some variation. As I mentioned, b3 is a big mistake. That means maybe white is giving black some chances to immediately exploit it. So if you want, you can pause the video, calculate some immediate kind of refutation moves for b3, and then see what Chigorin played in the game. So Chigorin decided to go c5, which is not an immediate refutation move, but more like just improving on his existing advantages. An immediate refutation kind of move would have been knight d5. Very energetic move. The point being, you obviously want to go knight f4 or knight c3 or knight b4, and if white captures e takes d5, you capture bishop with the bishop, and now you are threatening to go moves like e4 or bishop takes f3, queen f3, e4 and attack this rook. And if bishop b2 is played, black can play f5. So again the threat is now fg4 or e4 after bishop f3, and you will be winning this bishop on b2 or the knight on f3, and black has a huge advantage. But instead, Chigorin decided not to complicate the matters. Instead, he went for c5, and white played bishop b2. So from this position onwards, I really enjoyed the way Chigorin played. He played a very strategic and a positional, brilliant game from this point onwards. So I would strongly suggest the viewers to keep guessing before you make the move on what Chigorin could have played. So he started with knight d7, and white went knight g5. So is black worried about the fact that he's going to lose his double bishops? Not really, because if you look at how good white bishops are, I mean, in the sense, how good in the sense they are just terribly placed on c2 and b2, then you wouldn't really be worried about the fact that white has double bishops and black is going to lose his double bishops. But instead, by going knight g5, white has further weakened this d4 square. So black decides to exploit it. A beautiful backward maneuvering move with knight b8. So the point being that knight c6 is going to come somewhere in the knight d4 or knight b4, and black has a great grip on those two squares. So white played knight e6, and the immediate reaction would be, okay, let's capture the queen and go ahead, keep the game going. But a great decision, f takes e6. Black is okay with the double pawns. So why is black okay with the double pawns? Because black is going to generate tremendous play down the f file, and not just play, I mean, he may even try to kind of create some mating threads or checks down the f file. And this double pawn is not actually bad, because white cannot really exploit this double pawns in any way. And this pawn on e6 actually allows allows black to have a better grip on these two squares also. So fe6 is a fantastic move, and white goes king g2. The logical idea would be to go something like knight c6 and then continue, but instead Chigorin first plays rook a7, so he wants to shift the rook to f7 and then keep the game going. So an idea for white would be to go a4, but then black can just simply shut down the queen side with b4. But in the game, white decided to go rook hf1, so he's kind of prophylactically or trying to go ahead and defend the f2 pawn before black even starts attacking on the f file. So for rook hf1, black goes rook a f7, white goes f3, and then knight c6. Just look at the quality of black's pieces in comparison to white, and you would realize how big of an advantage black actually has. The knight is aiming at two critical outpost kind of squares. The queen is not maybe doing a very big role, but it is still defending c5 pawn, and it can play some role on this diagonal in the future if bishop, some sort of knight d4, bishop d4, e d4 kind of moves happen. So queen has a potential. Both these rooks are fantastically placed, aiming at f3, the semi-open file. And this bishop, yes, I agree, it's not in a best of diagonal for now, but it has the potential, and black can certainly improve. But instead, if you look at the white pieces, the queen on e2 is just terrible, the bishop on c2 is terrible, this is terrible. So actually you kind of see, if you don't look at the rook on a1, it kind of looks a bit like checkers on the board, like see, if you see, it's like checkers, is everything placed one next to each other except for the bishop and the rook. So I should be actually highlighting it on the red, so that to show that how much white has placed his pieces on the red's formation of checkers here. So in the game for 24th move knight c6, white decided to go queen d2, and black went rook f4. So instead of rook f4, black could have, as I was mentioning, this bishop is not in the best position as of now. So black could have tried to go bishop f6 with the idea of bishop h4 and then go rook f4, but instead black first went rook f4, white played rook a d1, and black went queen e7. So the queen is now moving towards the king side, and possibly queen h4 is the square that black has in mind. So white goes queen e1, stopping black from going queen h4, and black goes bishop f6. The idea that I mentioned like 2 moves ago, that the bishop can be improved to h4 and then the game can continue. So bishop f6 is a fantastic move, and after queen e2, bishop h4, and white goes bishop b1. So white is now, I think, either trying to go some sort of rook c1 and try to attack the c5 pawn, or possibly at some point he wants to go a3, bishop a2, and some sort of b4. Those could be possibly the only 2 ideas that white can do in this position, and white has no active other plans. So here for bishop b1, if you see, all the black's pieces are optimally placed. So the logical next step would be, what is the question we should ask? And the answer for that question is in h5. So if you have improved your pieces the maximum, then change the pawn structure, because when you change the pawn structure, then your optimal pieces may become slightly suboptimal. So you would have to again go ahead and improve your pieces to better squares. So for h5, white played h3 and black played h takes g4, h takes g4, and go queen g5. Did black just blunder an exchange? Should be the first thought when we see queen g5, because white can simply go bishop c1. But black is not blundering an exchange, but black actually is like, I think black had calculated this out completely. The point being, black can go knight d4, and if bishop takes f4, play rook takes f4, and if queen d2, just take knight takes f3, and the next move queen takes g4 is coming, and the checkmate should be in the radar very soon. So this is if 32nd move white goes bishop c1 in hope of winning an exchange. In case of white, let's say, goes rook c1 trying to attack the c5 pawn, black still has rook takes f3, because if rook takes f3, you have queen g4 with a check, and then you are taking on f3. So if queen takes f3, if white plays queen f3, then you have rook f3. The point being, if king f3 or so, you can play queen f4 check and win the g4 pawn, or try to think of going some, or queen d2 later on, win the bishop on d2. So seeing all this, white decided to go king h3, so he can defend the g4 pawn with his king. So for this, black played rook 8 f7. I really like this move because, I mean, the same kind of thing can be achieved by going king g7 and rook h8. But, putting the king on the same diagonal as the bishop is not the most comfortable thought that you would like to have on the board. I mean, you'll always have to worry about something. Okay, I mean, can white do some unexpected trick or something? So it feels more safer to put the rook on 8 to go rook 8 f7 with the idea of rook h7. So if bishop c1, again the story is same. Black can go rook h7, and if king g2, go knight d4, and white should just resign basically. So for rook 8 f7, white went rook c1, and rook h7 is good enough to win. But instead Chigorin went queen h6. So if you are going to play queen h6, I would strongly suggest you pause the video here and calculate what are the variations that are going to come up here. Because if you have calculated one critical variation and figured out that it is winning, then it's better to proceed from here than just playing through the moves. Because I strongly feel Chigorin had calculated all the way up to that critical move on 35th move. We are right now on the 33rd move, and that is white goes back king g2, because there's a lot of discovered checks that can arise after the bishop moves away from h4. So white just drops back to king g2, and now it's fine, because earlier the problem is there was always rook f3 followed by queen g4 check, but as the queen moved to h6, there's no really pressure on the g4. So king g2 makes sense. Black goes rook h7, white goes rook h1, and this is that critical moment which black should have anticipated when he went queen h6. And that move here is rook takes f3, a brilliant tactical shot. The point of it being, if king takes f3, queen f4 check, king g2, queen g3, and you have a mate in 3 coming up. So for rook takes f3, if white goes queen takes f3, then you have queen d2 check, king g1. If king f1, still you just play queen takes b2. If king g1 was played in the game, there are multiple winning lines here for black, and the line that was chosen by Chigorin is bishop f2 check. The point being, if queen f2, you can just play rook takes h1 and win the queen on f2. So if king f1 was played, for king g1, bishop f2, king f1, and here black went knight d4, white had to play bishop takes d4, queen takes c1 check, and if king f2, just rook h1. Instead, white played king e2, and now rook takes h1, bishop takes f2, queen takes b1, g5, and queen f1 check. And here white resigned, as white realized this position is pretty much hopeless right now. So a big kind of word we can say is white didn't put any good resistance. B3 was such a terrible move that we can see this, the b3, what the effect of b3, even all the way up to somewhere, like close to move 30. Let's say, where is it? Where are we looking at? We are looking at the effect of it all the way up to here, move 41. The bishop on b1 or c2 as it is on move 18, and till move 41 the bishop stayed on c2 or b1 and had no good role in the game. So that is a big mistake by white, and a better move would have been to go king g2 and keep the game going. But even in that position, black certainly has better chances to score. But at least it wouldn't have been this terrible for white. But the point to note is that this game was played in 1890. We are talking about a game that was played close to 130 years ago, when the concept of defense and how to defend or put the best possible resistance was not really well developed. Generally, if you look at the games from that time period, if a side takes the initiative, it's generally game over. That side will just convert it into a win, and the other side will just put no resistance. So this game is also kind of an example of like that, as white could not, I mean, here white also had no option to generate or no chance to generate any sort of resistance. But also in general, white's move seemed to be like he kind of gave up. White didn't try anything actively. So that is this game between Isidor Gunsberg and Mikhail Chigorin from the 1890 match they had in Havana, Cuba. And what you just saw is from the 21 Gems of Chess series that is brought to you by Chess Gyaan Academy and FollowChess app, as an initiative to beat the boredom during the lockdown that has happened all over the world. So we are now already on our day 9 of the 21 days series. So you can watch the previous day games. We have talked about players like Gellert, Bololevsky, Stein, and Reshavsky we have talked about, and few more legendary players we have talked. So if you want to see the previous day games, you can check them in the Follow Chess app, or if you want, you can also see the video part alone without the PGN on the Chess Gyaan YouTube channel. So tomorrow I'll be coming out with a different Grandmasters game, and I mean a great legendary Grandmasters game. And till then, everyone stay safe, and thanks everyone for giving a wonderful support. The channel, my Chess Gyaan channel crossed 100 subscribers, so thanks everyone for that. Great support. I mean, this channel grew rapidly in just the last 8 to 9 days due to all your wonderful support. So tomorrow I'll come back with a different Grandmaster game, and we'll see a masterpiece by the Grandmaster. Everyone stay safe. Signing off as Grandmaster Priyadharshan Kannappan. Bye bye.